Hi.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. It's lovely to have you here. Please, if you're just coming in, just find your seats, settle in so we can get ready to kick off with the EU Youth Conference. Okay. Great. So hello and welcome to the third EU Youth Conference of this cycle.
Hej and välkomna till Växjö.
So if you remember, in January last year, we kicked off the cycle under the topic Engaging Together for a Sustainable and Inclusive Europe. And now, under the Swedish Presidency, as we also just heard and probably know, we are going to conclude this 9th cycle. And we are quite excited to be here with you again and to shape together European youth policies. My name is Clara Drammeh. You maybe have met me already at the past 2 conferences. I'm the European facilitator of this cycle, and I'm also a former German EU youth delegate. And I'm super happy to have another former youth delegate with me on stage as a co-facilitator.
Yeah, my name is Bergholtz, and I was a youth delegate of Sweden a couple of years ago. Now I'm the national facilitator, so I'm really, really happy to be back and to have this opportunity to share the space with you guys. I'm currently in the Advisory Council on Youth of the Council of Europe, so I'm still in the youth movement and moving on.
And we look forward to guide you through the conference and the plenaries, but of course we have a lot of people from the organizing team, such as the facilitators, the harvesters, and so on with us, who will also be part of the team guiding you through the conference. And to get started, we want to get to know who's in the room a little bit. So we're going to read out statements, and of course that's also a bit of an energizer. We want you to stand up if the statement applies to you, okay? So let's start with the organizing team. If you're part of the organizing team from Sweden, for instance, the ministry, but also a researcher, a harvester, or facilitator, then please stand up. Okay. Look around. These are the awesome people who prepared the conference to you. Let's give them an applause. Thank you. And I'm 100% sure that's not all of them, but they are all over the venue place, but you will meet them, don't worry.
If you are from an international non-governmental youth organization, can you please stand up? Look at that. Good group. Can we give them an applause too? Welcome.
So, moving on to the ministry representatives. So everybody who's a ministerial delegate or ministry representative, please stand up. Also lovely to have you with us here.
Look. If you are a youth delegate, if you're from a national youth council, please stand up. Yay, applause. Welcome.
Definitely the majority. Nice. And now, if it's your first time being in Sweden, please stand up. Okay, wow.
Wow.
Also quite a lot.
And yeah, please take a seat. Welcome, so very welcome. And let me just take an opportunity here. Would you like to learn a little bit of Swedish? Just, yeah? I have a word for you. Hey. Hello. It's not that complicated, right? Hey, we can do that.
Let's start easy and then we gradually improve over the next days.
My Swedish course is a bit, easy level first. The second word, can we get that one? Tack. Thank you, exactly, yeah. This is a nice word to be able to say to everyone at the conference. Like,
say it to the organizing team.
Say it. Very good. And the last word for today's lesson, fika. And I think you know fika maybe, but the fika is for the coffee break. But fika is so much more. Fika is basically a state of mind in Sweden, and we really treasure it. So if you need something, if you feel low energy, find someone and just go, I need a fika, and they will understand you.
But Alice, maybe just to ask you for one more word. The place we are in. How do you pronounce it correctly?
Växjö.
Växjö.
Everybody say Växjö. Cool.
Okay.
I will quiz you tomorrow morning on this.
And this is also going to be an opportunity during the conference to, of course, also get to know Växjö and to experience a bit of the Swedish culture and to drive around the town, have some formal and, non-formal social events, and a lot of time for networking, hopefully, where you can get to know each other a bit more and hopefully maybe find connections, friends, build a network that will last longer than just a conference here in Växjö. Now, last question. If this is your first EU Youth Conference, please stand up. Okay. Wow. Also quite a lot. Nice to have you here with us. Thank you for joining this cycle. Although it's the last conference, we still want you to know your way around and to participate, of course, in the discussions. And to make sure that you will find your way around, we have, again, the organizing team to help you, as well as the facilitators and harvesters. But if you have any logistical or organizational questions, then you can reach out to the organizing team and you will recognize them with their key card or accreditation card. As you can see, as delegates, you should have a blue background, and the organizing team has an orange background. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact them and to ask them.
Can we just do a round of applause for the people who are here for the first time?
Yes. Applause for the people who are here for the first time. Hopefully not the last time, though. Now, sometimes, hopefully not at this conference, but sometimes emergencies occur. And if there is an emergency, we have an emergency contact person. So this is Angelica. Could you maybe raise your hand? Perfect. Ah. That's Angelica. And if there is an emergency, and having lost your hotel key card is not an emergency, but any other cases like fire or somebody sick, then you can contact Angelica. Thank you for being our contact person. If you've lost your room key card, though, you could go to the information desk, and that's in the foyer, and there you will find organizing people for sure. Now, also, we have documents for this conference, and you should have received them with your practical information note before the conference, but there is also the accreditation platform. It's called PPE. It's the platform from the presidency, and there all relevant documents are uploaded and being updated. So please feel free to check the program on there. There you will also, I think, find Angelica's number again. Any other organizational notes right now?
No, I think we're all set. We've been preparing for a long time, you guys.
Yes. Then I would say now let's get started with the official opening of the conference. And for that we have Jakob Forssmed, Minister for Social Affairs and Public Health of Sweden, who has sent us a video message to welcome you. I would say let's take a look and get started.
Dear youth delegates, European Commission representatives, and EU Youth Conference participants. I am very honored and delighted to welcome you to Växjö and to the third EU Youth Conference of the 9th cycle of the European Union Youth Dialogue. Some of you have participated in the European Union Youth Conferences before, and for some of you this is the first time. For most of you, it's probably your first time in Växjö. Växjö is where the roads meet. This is how the city got its name, and it is fitting now that the paths of Europe's young people also meet here in Växjö. As Minister for Social Affairs and Public Health with responsibility for youth policy issues, my ambition is for all young people to have good living conditions and the power to shape their own lives and influence the general development of society. As Minister, one of my priorities is combating mental illness and loneliness among young people. This is an important precondition for young people's well-being. This requires broad efforts in several policy areas where social inclusion is key. At this conference, young people, policymakers, and political decision makers will work together and share ideas and experiences on how Europe can be improved for young people in the areas of inclusion and sustainability. I am sure you will have an interesting and fun time at the conference, where you will also be working hard on finalizing the main messages on the social dimension of a sustainable Europe for youth. Unfortunately, I will not be able to be there when you present your final recommendations on Wednesday. However, my State Secretary, Petra Noura, will be in attendance and have the privilege of meeting, listening, and talking to you. Lastly, I want to thank everyone who has helped make this conference possible, the National Council of Swedish Children and Youth Organizations, and the Swedish Agency for Youth and Civil Society, who are part of the organizing team. I would also like to thank the European Youth Forum and the European Commission for their cooperation. Once again, I would like to welcome all participants to the EU Youth Conference in Växjö, and I wish you every success in the coming days. Thank you.
Wow, that really gives a bit of like an official feeling, right, with a minister greeting. Actually, we have a couple of representatives from the organization team who will be joining us now and give us a bit more of the context of how this conference came about, what the thoughts of it were, and where we are at now. So please help me welcome on stage Miriam, Lena, and Noura. Hi. I think we can stay around here. Yeah. Oh, take a table each. That works out great. Welcome, you guys. So happy to have you here. And I will just dig straight in and start with you, Lena, because you are the general director of the agency. And I need to look at the full name because it's long. It's
I know. You always need a paper for the name of our agency.
Swedish Agency for Youth and Civil Society. It's a very important agency. So I know that you work with providing information about both the Swedish presidency to young people, but you also work a lot with informing about the EU youth dialogue process. Can you give us some examples of what the agency does in this?
Yes, I can. But first, hey! You have to practice. Hey! Well, first of all, very welcome to Sweden and Växjö. As we have our office here, we are so proud to see you all here. It's so nice to have you here. Some few words about our agency. The Swedish Agency for Youth and Civil Society, MUCF, is a government agency. We produce knowledge on children and young people. We work with people in the age of 13 to 25. We are following their living conditions when it comes to areas such as work, education, health, leisure time, influence. And we also distribute grants to organizations, and we are following the conditions for the civil society. We are the national agency for Erasmus+, youth and sports, and the European Solidarity Corps, which gives young people the chance to volunteer, study, or practice in another European country. When it comes to the presidency, the Swedish presidency, our agency has three main tasks: organizing events, informing about the presidency, and support the EU youth dialogue. And I will tell you a little bit more of what we are doing. First, When it comes to organizing events, I can mention that we are very honored to be co-organizing the EU Youth Conference here in Växjö, and we are so proud that the conference is here in Växjö. But we will also organize 3 other events: a meeting for national agencies for Erasmus+, Youth and European Solidarity Corps, a national contact point meeting for the program Citizens, Equality, Rights and Values, and also a meeting later on in Stockholm, a network meeting for the organizations working with the project Europe Goes Local, a project about the European Charter on local youth work. Secondly, we are working with information about the Swedish agency to municipalities, to regions, to civil society. And of course, we are focusing on youth policy and policy regarding civil society, and also information about the events that we are co-organizing or organizing. You can also see there are 2 special actions that we have been doing lately. First of all, one exhibition outdoors, where you can see outside the conference hall outdoors, you can see a thought barometer, where we have young Swedes' opinions about their lives in Sweden. And that is very important to show young people's most important issues and questions or discussions, opinions outdoors. And that's a cooperation with Växjö municipality. And that is also a way of raise awareness about EU, the conference, and the youth dialogue. But if you go out there, you have another exhibition, and that's an exhibition we have done together with the other Nordic countries and young people in the Nordic countries about their lives. Third, when it comes to the youth dialogue, we are supporting the youth dialogue in Sweden and work closely with the National Council of Swedish Children and Youth Organizations to make the dialogue more known in Sweden. And as a government agency, of course, we are working with the main goal for the youth policy in Sweden. And the goal in Sweden is that all young people should have good living conditions, the power to shape their lives and influence on the development of the society. So we can see that the youth dialogue has been an important tool to achieve that aim. We have also worked together with LSU, the Youth National Council of Swedish Children and Youth Organization, to develop a special model or method for local democracy workshops. And we try to make the municipalities and region working with that methods. I would like to say that the presidency gives us even more tools and more power to highlight young people's rights in Sweden and in EU. So it's very important.
Wow, thank you, Lena. Yeah? And I can only echo, really take a look at the exhibitions here because they're really impressive. But can I also ask another thing? What role does this conference play for the agency?
I think this conference helps us to understand EU a little bit better. It makes us work with EU issues and make it more visible. And I also would say the conference has increased the awareness of the youth dialogue, which is very important. And we will tomorrow carry out some interviews with some of you to gather information that we can show young people and local decision makers to make give them more information and give them more knowledge about the youth dialogue. The dialogue is an important tool to increase knowledge about EU and about young people's right to have influence on local level, on national level, and on the EU level. So sometimes you maybe feel that EU is a little far away from you, not something that is important in your everyday life. But we know that EU is a very important actor. The Parliament makes so many decisions that we are affected by on our daily lives. So it's so important to also include the EU dimension. Thank you. When you work stronger in youth participation on local and national level, you need to have young voices on all the levels.
Great. Thank you so much, Lena. I will now turn to Noura, who's our second guest, and you are the president of the Swedish National Youth Council. So really a big event for you, right? And the whole organization, because you planned for a long time and you've been very influential in the whole process. So this must be a special feeling for you also to be here. Can I ask, what are your hopes for this conference, both in regards of youth policy development, but like the effects for Swedish youth civil society?
First of all, also from our side, a huge welcome to Växjö and Sweden and to the EU Youth Conference. We're very happy to organize this with our Swedish counterparts at the ministry and the agency. And I'm so excited to see you all here today. So maybe let me zoom out a little bit. So what happens in the EU and EU decision-making matters greatly to young people, both in Sweden and in Europe, whether it's employment, education, security, health and mental health, infrastructure, gender equality, or the environment. EU decisions affect young people's everyday lives. And there is really not that separation of the EU and the national context in many regards. And the EU has had a positive impact on youth policies in Sweden and beyond. But there are, of course, still challenges that we must address, and that's why we're here. And at this conference, we hope you will bring recommendations that will lead to progress of issues of concern to young people, both in Sweden and across Europe. And our hope is that also these set of recommendations will be taken forward properly by EU member states, that they are decisions that bring both more prosperity and more power to young people, because there is not a set box of issues that concern young people. All issues affect young people. This includes investing in youth employment, education, mental health support, affordable housing, by tackling the climate and environmental crisis with high ambitions and with the sense of urgency. And of course, many of these issues are covered in the EU youth goals. And one important thing that from Swedish youth civil society that perhaps we would like to be centered a little bit here is the focus on expanding civic and democratic space for young people and the realization of human rights in general, but civil and political rights in specific. We believe that young people must be given more power and opportunities to shape their own lives, decision-making and their futures, and that the right of young people to make their voices heard, both in formal decision-making, on the streets, in protests, in youth organizations, is something that we create a conducive and supportive environment for. And I say this also because this is even more important in a world, but also a European region of democratic backsliding, of rising authoritarianism, nationalism, populism. And we hope to share experiences and learn from one another. And we believe that conferences like these are really a platform to catalyst change and to shape a more inclusive Europe where young people are at the forefront of shaping both policies and creating change. So welcome, and we're very happy to have you here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Noura. And I also have a follow-up for you, because I know that LSU you were very clear with your priorities also for the presidency and what you wanted to see in the priorities. And the youth goal number 3 on inclusive societies and number 10 on a sustainable green Europe were highlighted as important. But LSU also pushed for the social dimension of sustainability. Can you tell us a bit more why? Why is this your focus?
Yeah, so we cannot speak about environmental sustainability without speaking about social sustainability. They are highly interdependent. And environmental sustainability can, frankly, not be achieved without addressing social concerns, human rights, social sustainability, because both many of the drivers, but also much of the impact of environmental degradation, such as poverty, inequality, lack of access to resources, conflict and instability, are also social issues. And environmental degradation can have a significant impact on social sustainability with issues of access to clean water, food security, natural resources, but also as a catalyst of displacement. So we really must address these challenges intertwined. We must make sure that the work on sustainability is based on creating inclusive societies where everyone, all young people in our region, has equal opportunities and access to basic services, but also that we take concrete actions to mitigate climate change and ensure that we leave a healthy planet for future generations. And at the end of the day, sustainability it's about both people and planet. It's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of their background or circumstances, has access to resources and opportunities to thrive, not just survive, to thrive. It's about ensuring that future generations have a planet that is healthy and habitable. And I'll just give a couple of quick examples of how these are so interlinked. So there's, of course, the clear link between climate change and human health. Climate change harms human health through air pollution, extreme weather events. There's a clear link between sustainable agriculture and rural communities. Sustainable agriculture practices benefit rural communities, but rural communities are also leading sustainable practices by improving soil fertility, increasing crop yields, and providing job opportunities. There's a very clear link between environmental justice and urban development, and I know infrastructure topics is also something that you will discuss here, but that sustainable urban development can both reduce environmental pollution and improve quality of life in low-income and minority communities, promoting social equity and environmental justice. There's of course the clear link between biodiversity and food security, but also on water scarcity and gender equity, where we see that a huge burden is placed on communities that have, this is of course maybe not a challenge that we face so much right now, but these types of conferences is something that we have to look to the future. So you have quite a daunting task ahead of you these couple of days. We hope that you'll be ambitious and courageous and propose clear recommendations that we then jointly will push for to be implemented at both EU and national levels.
Cool. Thank you so much, Noura. And let me just say the way that you present how to work with sustainability, it's such a pedagogical way to do it. So really thank you for giving us that input. I'm looking forward to see a lot of LSU representatives here for the conference too, and to be able to talk more about this. I will now turn to our last guest, who's Miriam. Miriam, you're head of a group at the Ministry for Health and Social Affairs, right? And you have been working a lot with LSU, for example. And I know that this is like a thing from the government. It's not an accident. You do it by choice. And I want to know, both like in the perspective of the national working groups working with LSU, but also in preparations for this conference, what are the motivations from a government side?
Okay, first of all, let me say hey and good morning to all of you. So nice to see all of you here in Växjö. Yes, you're right. It's not an accident. So it's really based on a strong belief that the participation of young people in democratic processes will strengthen youth policy and at all different levels. Youth policy really becomes better with youth participation. It's really important that the needs and the priorities of young people should be reflected in decisions, especially the ones they're concerned by. But it's also based on a very long and strong tradition of civil society in Sweden. So it goes back several hundred years, I would say, where our democracy is really built on civic participation. And in Sweden today, more than half of the population makes non-profit contributions. And the general objective of civil society policy in Sweden that's adopted by our parliament is to improve the conditions for civil society as an important part of democracy. And this is really to be achieved through dialogue with civil society. And in the government offices, there's really lots of different models for structured dialogue, and we see this as a complement to the official referral process, really to improve the quality in decision making and help coordinate the contacts with the civil society. But it's also a very important goal of the Swedish youth policy that Lena was talking about. It has an objective of inclusion and dialogue with young people. One of the goals of the youth policy is that all central government decisions and initiatives that affects young people aged between 13 and 25 should have a youth perspective. So youth participation is really important on all levels, not just national, also regional and local and EU level, of course. But youth policy is really a cross-sectoral policy area. So within the Ministry of Social Affairs, it's not us who's responsible for all issues concerning youth. So one of our roles is really to coordinate between different ministries and ensure the youth policy perspective, because we have a collective decision-making process in Sweden. So I would say youth policy in Sweden is very much mainstreamed and very much based on knowledge of young people and living conditions. And this is like statistics and knowledge that we get from our national agency and the Youth Council and so on. But that's also in line with the EU Youth Policy Cooperation. So I would say dialogue is really at the core of our policies. So that's why the National Youth Council has really been part of the planning and the implementation of this conference throughout. So we are representing the organizing teams here, and I would say it's really been a joint effort throughout. But above all, it's been really important that the process has been youth-led.
Great, thank you so much, Miriam. And just to connect like this and the ambitions of the organizing team with the people we have in front of us, I think we have a group who will work very intensely for a couple of days now. And I'm sure that they are also eager to know what will the ministry do with the outcomes of it and follow up. Can you give us a little bit about that too?
Yeah, I know. I mean, you have very intense days ahead of you, but hopefully you'll also have have some fun, and hopefully meet some new friends and meet with new and old colleagues. And I really look forward to all the important discussions that will be held. But as I mentioned before, youth policy, I mean, it really has to reflect the voices of young people. So it's been really important for us to focus on the dialogue. So the organizing team have really made sure that there's a lot of time during the conference for working group session. And I think that's really where the rubber will meet the road during these coming days. So the youth delegates here will work on finalizing 5 recommendations, one for each sub-theme that you've all received in the documents sent out before here. And the goal is then that the recommendations from the conference will feed into the council resolution. So the council resolution is then a political document that's discussed and negotiated in the Youth Working Party in Brussels. So it's not a binding document, but it will put down the collective effort of the member states. And hopefully this will then be adopted in May at the council meeting. So this will then all be part of the outcomes of the 9th cycle of the EU Youth Dialogue. But there's also been another aim for the Swedish Presidency in the field of youth, and that has really been to look close at the process of the EU Youth Dialogue. And it's really to see how could it be developed, both to allow for more inclusive and transparent process, but also to enhance the feedback mechanism. So in the coming days after the conference, there will also be a Director General meeting for youth, and they will also discuss and reflect on how to develop the EU Youth Dialogue. So yeah, I think I'll stop there and really wish you all the best for the coming days, and I really hope you will have fruitful discussions and a good time, hopefully.
Thank you, Miriam. Another round of applause. Yeah. And really, to all 3 of you here, you're representing a lot of people who've been working to prepare this conference. I would just say that it's great to see the high ambition, but also the cooperation work and working through dialogue. It's really a beautiful thing for Sweden to carry on. And as national facilitator, I'm really happy to see it. So thank you all. And a final round of applause, you guys.
Tack!
Tack. And Clara, I will leave it to you for a bit.
Yes. And here I'm back again. Thank you, Alice. Thank you to the speakers for introducing the hosts of the conference a bit more to us. Now, as you've heard, they also briefly talked about the objectives of the conference. And just to clarify and to be sure that we are all on track, we now want to together look at the objectives of the conference so we know what we work towards to. So I would like to welcome Emma Wedner with me on stage. She is one of the Swedish EU youth delegates, and you might have already met her during the preparatory meetings. Okay. Emma, could you just briefly introduce to us what does a cycle in general look like, and where are we right now in the cycle?
Of course. Hi, everyone, and great to see so many new faces here as well. If you joined me during the prep meeting back a few weeks ago, hopefully my voice is doing better. Maybe you can hear me more clearly. I'm just here to brief you quickly on how the cycle is doing, what we're looking forward to in the coming days, and really what we've been working with, see how far we've come and how we can finish this off in the best way possible. Let's see. So we started off this process back in France, where we met online to really work with the priorities of the youth goals that you can see here up on stage. We were each divided into the sub-themes, working on the priorities, which then were handled by our researchers, and then led us to the consultation process, where these questions were really guiding us through these consultation processes. After the conference in France, these consultation processes began, and we were doing our national consultation processes in each country, and they really looked different in all the countries, and that's really what makes this process so unique in the sense that it really fits all of the different countries and how they choose to work. We met in Prague when the consultation process was still in bloom, and that's when we decided to share our best practices. How do we work with these sub-themes now, and how can we learn from each other? And now we're meeting here in Sweden. This is really the first time where we can actually use these implementation reports that were then created out of the national consultations reports, and then feed these into the discussions that we're working on to arrive at these recommendations that Miriam was just talking about. I won't really repeat what she just said, but this is where we have our mandates. If you look in each of our national consultation reports, we have all of the knowledge from what our local youth councils and national youth councils have worked on in the past. And this is really where we start our discussion for this conference and during the working groups.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
So Emma has highlighted a quite important or relevant aspect, which is that this conference and the objectives of this conference are actually building on what we've been doing through the cycles. So if we go to the next slide, let me introduce to you the core objectives of the conference. Firstly, we want to draft 5 recommendations, so 1 per subtopic. And these recommendations, again, they should not be new ideas or anything different than what we've discussed in the past conferences, but this conference is rather like a filter, condensing all the things we've collected, all the things we've discussed to 1 priority recommendation that we will feed into the council resolution. So I'm not going to go in detail about the council resolution because I think you just heard that quite well, but I just would like to highlight again that this is your opportunity to contribute in shaping European youth policy in the field of sustainability and inclusion with a specific focus on youth. So I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us to discuss and to see what should be highlighted after this conference. But also, we have a second pillar, let's say, of objectives of the conference, which is the reflections on the EU Youth Dialogue. So maybe the experts in the room know that 2023 marks the half-time of the current EU Youth Strategy. So the EU Youth Strategy was adopted in 2018 and kicked off in 2019 and will last until 2027. Also, the 10th cycle is coming up. We will meet the presidency, the representatives of the presidency later on in the conference. And I feel like this is a good time to take a moment to actually reflect on where we are at, how is the EU Youth Dialogue doing, and of course also talk about what could and should be improved. And for that, the presidency has introduced the open space format to the conference. So the open space format is, as the name already says, a very open and flexible space. We give you the space and you shape it. So this is a format where we rely on your input. And this will be your opportunity to decide on what topics, looking at the EU Youth Dialogue, we should focus on in the conference. So for instance, how can we promote the inclusion of young people with fewer opportunities, or reflecting on the sustainability of the EU Youth Dialogue in general. Whatever topic you feel like is relevant right now, you can propose it, and then one of the session slots will be dedicated to that topic. So to the procedure of proposing a topic, we have a QR code for you. Maybe we can go to the next slide. And there you can scan, and a Padlet should come up. And in that Padlet, we invite you to propose the topics for the open space format that you would like to discuss. And be aware, if you propose a topic, then you kind of take ownership of that topic. So you will also be facilitating that session. But don't worry, there will be people in the room, like the facilitators and the harvesters, that will support you in the process, kind of be your co-leads. But still, we want you to own the space during that. So you can post topics to the Padlet until lunch break, and also if you don't want to post the topic, you can still vote on topics. This helps us to decide what sessions or what topics will be discussed. We have 20 session slots, so quite a lot. All the outcomes of the open space format will be summarized and concluded by the researchers and the harvesters. And the outcomes of the open space format will be included in the final conference report. And that's a document that, first of all, will be sent out to a lot of people, member states, national working groups, INGYOs, and so on. So they will take a look at it, but also it's a document we can hand over to the next presidency to invite the next, but also future presidencies to take a look at your discussions and hopefully shape the EU youth dialogue to a better. So let me check if there's anything I've forgotten on my list. Doesn't look like it, but again, the last objective also is networking and talking to each other. So although we want to get some hands-on outcomes for this conference, we also want you to get into dialogue, to talk to ministerial delegates, to the decision makers, meet other youth delegates, INGYOs. There's a lot of expertise in the room, and we really want you to meet them, to discuss, and to also, of course, take the outcomes of the conference, but also of your discussions back to your member states. That's the most important aspect. That's it for the introduction to the objectives of the conference. If you have questions, feel free to come to us, the lead facilitators or your working group facilitators. The working group facilitators will guide you through the process, the whole conference, and you will meet them later on when we introduce the agenda of the day. But now I'm handing back to you, Alice, for the opening panel.
Thank you, Clara. Okay, so I will ask some more people to join me on stage. And now that we heard already from the organizing committee, I wanted to talk a bit more with a couple of experienced youth representatives. So please help me welcome on stage Kristýna, Sigge, Martina, and Julija. Yes. Hi, please take a seat, you guys. And help me break in these chairs.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let me just take one moment to introduce a bit further who we have in front of us, so we're all aware. We also have the names on the screens, but first we have Kristýna from the Czech Council of Youth and Children, right? We have no, I'll go in the order instead. That's better than what I have in my cards, right? We have Martina, right, from CNAJEP, but it's, let me say the full name, Committee for National and International Relations for Youth and Non-Formal Organizations, right? Long name.
Yeah.
And then we have Julija from Rural Youth Europe. And at the very end, Sigge from Sweden with the National Council of Swedish Youth Organizations. Welcome, everybody. One more round of applause. Nice, right? Cool. So now we've heard a little bit about the motives of the conference from the organizing team, why they wanted to present it this way and their ambitions. We also heard Clara just present how the working groups will be structured and what we will be doing in the context for all the participants. But with you here, I want to focus in a little bit more about being a representative and the experiences that you have from it, because we're now at the final leg of the 9th cycle, and we saw that there are a lot of people who are joining us for their first conference. And it's a special experience, right, to be a youth delegate. So I wanted to ask you if you have any advice on how to approach this conference. And it's a very big question, so I'm sure you have different answers to it. But can I maybe start right here? What do you respond, Kristýna?
So I think it's important to have a positive approach to new things, definitely, especially when you're here for the first time. But in the same time, don't we worry, it's your first time. Everybody's was a first time, here at the conference, so don't be afraid to ask your more senior delegate within the delegation. Don't be afraid to ask the facilitators if you are not sure with an abbreviation, because we like to speak in abbreviations sometimes, so please do if you're not sure. And
yeah, just like enjoy the debates, enjoy the safe space you have. If you feel safe in the debate, that's also super important for you to have like a really nice discussion with the facilitators, with the ministerial delegates, and with other stakeholders in the group. So, and if you don't, please approach anybody in the room. I'm sure there are people who will help you get back on track with topics that are difficult for you or with things you're not sure about.
Cool. So really just go for a fika, is that what you're also saying? Yeah,
Yeah, fika. That actually sounds good.
fika are good
Something
stuff.
like a coffee and cookies, I heard.
Exactly.
Great.
Good tip, thank you. Martina, can I ask you, what would you say is a good approach for this conference?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, like today we are in the final phase of this 9th cycle. So like we have just 3 months left to arrive at the European resolution. So I would like to share what we have done at a national level, because we organize a big event and we had like 1,020 people, young people that came together, also with some local decision makers, and like the young people wrote some recommendations. So like we are looking for this European resolution in order to implement also in a local level what the young people wrote and what are their proposals. So I think this conference is very, very important. And like to write these recommendations, and as youth delegates, I think we have a big responsibility of what we will write in these 3 days and how we will do it. So I also would like to remind all youth delegates that today there is the publication of the EPSIC report. So it's a big document in which scientists wrote their science thesis about climate work from 2005 until 2022. And what in France young people say that it's important that in policy making we listen to what scientifics has to say, so it's scientific work, and this is also a priority that it was mentioned in the resolution of the 8th cycle, so the previous cycle. So I think it's important for youth delegates to keep this in mind and to work on that during this conference.
Thank you so much, Martina. And can I just say that what we saw here is a great example of an approach to trust what you know. Because you're also here as representatives of something, right? So you did the work, you studied up, and you're coming here to be able to form the concrete resolution. So yeah, thank you so much. Julija, can I ask you, how would you say to approach this? Because this is your first conference too, right?
Yes, this is my first time as a youth delegate and as a representative of that huge organization. I just want to say that be open-minded, speak up. I hope that really every one of you will be able to give their opinions, to talk from their heart, to talk from their experiences, and because everybody has their own knowledge, and we are here in this platform to share this and to collect really good points. So just be respectful and speak up.
Speak up. Can I just ask you also, since this is your first conference, how did you prepare for it? Like, do you feel like you know everything now, or do you feel like you're still learning?
It would be great to know everything, but I'm here to learn more about the cycles and everything. I'm still getting into the process, but it's not the problem, because we are learning every day, and it's really good opportunity also for the new ones and also for those who already know everything, to mingle and to talk and change opinions. So I'm looking forward.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm sure you will have a successful first conference, one of many. Yeah? And Sigge, my Swedish colleague, what approach would you say that the youth delegates should have in mind for this conference?
Sorry, I didn't actually hear, sorry.
No, sorry, just what is your suggestion for the youth delegates? How should they approach the conference?
Thank you. First of all, good morning, god morgon, and welcome to Växjö. I see there's a lot of new delegates to the EU Youth Dialogue, so you're much very welcome. I reflected in different terms of the question of advice, but the first one is to really take good care of the time while you're here at the conference. The cycle is for 1.5 years approximately. It is not unlimited of time that you have to work with the questions that you have together discussed and also agreed on. So first of all, both take care of the time you have here in Växjö, but also the time to have forward. Another thing that I actually started doing when I entered the National Youth Council is try to give time to reflections of the work that you do. So I highly encourage you to, if this is your first time, reflect on the work that you've done in Växjö and also preparations. But if it's your last time, also try to reflect on all what's been happening these 1.5 years in the cycle. Because the reflection part is not just for you, it could also be to evaluate what was good during the conference and all the work that's been done, but also to put forward to the upcoming dialogues. And I also reflected that, try to bring some words into the conference of what it means to me. I haven't been that involved. I was in Prague, so I see some similar faces. But I came out with connections, colleagues, and corporations as the 3 words that, for me, represent the dialogue. And they represent it in 2 ways. The first one is that you meet the colleagues and you meet friends and you make the corporations while you're at the conference and you're in the dialogue. But a lot of the work also starts when the dialogue is over, because this is not the end of your engagement, hopefully not. So the forum and the context of the dialogue ends at some point for you. But relevant part connected to connections, colleagues, and also to cooperation will have a long-lasting, will last longly. So the dialogue might be a start for you as getting closer to EU cooperation and in the institution, but it also starts for the EU with encouraging young people to be involved. So my last advice and reflections that I had on the question is that in times where there's a lot of divisions and there's a lot of voices that want to divide societies and people, we need the 3 C's, both the cooperation, colleagues, and connections. But we also need contexts like this one, and forums like the dialogue, that unite us and give us unity for common goals.
Great, thank you so much, Sigge. Connections, colleagues, collaborations. Yes.
Cooperation, that's right.
Cooperations, sorry, I'm gonna write it down. Can I do an open question to you all? I was just wondering, we also have ministerial delegates, right? Do you have any advice to them? Anyone?
Well, I think they were also young, or they are still young at some point, but they're still in a bit different situation than us young delegates here. So, yeah, don't be afraid, ministerial delegates. It's a safe, I think for most of you, or for some of you, it's also a first time at a conference. So be sure to mingle with the young people. It's about the intergenerational dialogue we had as one of the main topics and one of the main priorities within this whole cycle. So it's also important to not forget that. And it's also important to really, I'm super glad that I can be part of this whole dialogue, because it's such a unique thing even within such a nice place such as the European Union, but unfortunately it is very unique. So we still really need to work hard to foster the outcomes of the dialogue to actually happen in place, and we kind of have to really fight for them to be implemented in the council conclusions and whenever. So yeah, don't be afraid to also use your ministerial power to support the young people and support the outcomes of the advocacy we do here.
Great. Anyone else who wants to jump on this? Any advice to the ministerial delegates?
I totally agree with what Kristýna said. I think they should not forget from when they were young, and I think it's very important to work together and to keep in mind also the priority of the presidency conference, the intergenerational aspects. I think that working in an intergenerational environment and together we can really achieve good recommendations. And this is the aim of the EU Youth Dialogue, to have people from different age and different perspective in order to work together.
Yeah. Great, thank you so much. Let me ask another question too, so we jump around a bit. And maybe this time, Sigge, if we can start with you and go the other way. You are all representatives of your organizations, and you've been involved in this process, in the dialogue for an amount of time, varying and in different capacities, of course. But for this conference, I want to ask you, as people who are participating here, what do you look forward to, and what are your expectations of this conference? Do you want to start, Sigge?
Yes. For me, I really look forward to, this is the end of the trio, so I'm not looking forward to that, but I'm looking forward to see the results, and also the results that you're striving for. I don't know if there will be like script recommendations that we can see and understand during this conference, but I'm really looking forward to meeting you and having discussions on your work, because I really want to emphasize that this is your conference and this is also your work. Me, in this context, I'm definitely an outsider. I come from an outsider, and so I have to have a respective approach. And in that way, I want to get as much understanding for your work as possible. And I'm really looking forward to evaluate the process for the evaluation from the youth delegates, but also from ministry delegates, to see what went well, what can we expect from next dialogues, and what can be upcoming questions that could be relatable. And another thing is that me and also the ones that will be presented, the recommendations, we can read and understand the recommendations on the script and on paper. But me being here as a representative, I want to get to understand what is your result, and I want to hear your result from you. That means, like in the coffee break, during the lunch, I want to hear what is your perspective on what went well, and what is your perspectives on the results. So I want to hear your thoughts on the results, but also on the process. And that could be questions related to, was it a meaningful representation? Was it meaningful to you, and was it a valuable experience that you bring with you? Because for us, that's representative from the civil society, we always strive to have meaningful participation, and in this talks, meaningful youth participation. So I'm really looking forward to have discussions on those matters. And for me, being in the background, it's more to hear, learn, and see. And the priority for me is you as individuals. You as a group, I will read the recommendations afterwards so that I can understand afterwards. But being here in Växjö is you as individuals that are my priority.
Thank you, Sigge. Julija.
What are my expectations? I'm looking forward that we are here, you delegates, and also we have here stakeholders. And when we have that many different backgrounds and experiences, it's good to share these things and also to hear from the stakeholders. What can they do for us? How can they approach us? And what changes can we do? So I'm looking forward to these discussions to see what are the possibilities, and also to grow my network, to meet new people, to learn about their lives, what they do, what are their aims of organizational national youth councils, and also to speak about these important topics as we have here, the goal 3 and 10, which are also closely connected to our values at Rural Youth Europe. so that we all strive for the green Europe and for the better future. So, yeah, and also inclusivity, that everyone is included and has the opportunity to speak up. So I hope it will be like a safe and healthy environment for all to give their speech or, yeah.
Very good. And we create that environment together. So, yeah, thank you for raising that. Martina, what are you looking forward to here?
Yes, so personally for me, like my expectation is to have really concrete proposition because like my opinion in last conference, like the sum up that came from the work of the workshops, it was still a bit too generic, and I really expect that in this conference we can manage to have really some concrete propositions. I also, of course, expect that what we will write, it will be really considered and then put in practice, because we have not in all the cycles we did not necessarily have some changes for all the cycles. So, like, my wish is that we can have as many changes as there are the number of cycles. And of course, as young people, we are here, we are mobilized, but sometimes it's difficult to mobilize the politicians. Like, so my expectation is that in this conference, but also for the next cycle, we can mobilize more, like the EU representative, to really have a dialogue, a real dialogue with them.
Nice, thank you so much. And last but not least, Kristýna.
Yeah, so my expectations, apart from a fruitful and nice debate in the working groups I will be in, I hope it's the same for you, dear delegates. I think it's the thing that has been mentioned already many times here, the council conclusions and the council resolution, because that's what we've been working on during the whole trio, and that's what we expect the member states to take as their own, at least a bit, within the Council of the European Union. So that's what I am looking forward to see, looking forward to hear, and looking forward to the compromise the member states will do in the Council. Because we young people, we do compromises every day. We compromise with the climate policies, we compromise with social policies, etc. There's too many compromises for us. So I hope we can give a bit of a lecture to the MEPs, to the ministerial representatives, then in the end will fight for the council conclusions at the council, and that it will actually be what we really wanted to be from the outcomes of the whole dialogue, sustainability and inclusive societies. I hope it will turn out to be in the biggest possible way to be included in the council resolutions, because the work doesn't end here in Växjö. It only Växjö. Okay.
We'll practice later.
I will. It only starts here. So please don't be afraid to approach the politicians, the MEPs. I'm pretty sure they've had some connection to you in the past, because, wow, the youth tokenization, it still exists. So, yeah, let's also tokenize our time with them and make the most of it.
Thank you, and thank you all. And I just a final one from me before I let you go. Where can we find you for the rest of the conference? Because, I mean, you have a bit different roles. You will be in a working group, right, Kristýna? Which one? Do you know?
Fika.
Or Fika. What topic would you prefer to follow?
So I think I chose the governance as a true nerd, but then it will be action and empowerment, maybe. Yeah,
okay,
I think so,
yeah,
but
we'll
mainly
see.
the governance.
Yeah. And any main preference of the topics for you?
I will join mobility and solidarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Same for me.
Rural youth, yeah. Sigge?
I will be lifting chairs, I think. So I'm in the organization team, so I will be strolling around in the working groups. So I don't really have a clear position now.
So if someone sees Sigge, you can go, where is the fika?
Where is the fika? Where is, you know,
and you got it
how
covered.
to get back to the hotels and everything. We'll manage it.
Perfect. A big round of applause to our panel. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah.